At the worst moment of my life, battling cancer, my own son and daughter-in-law acted like I was already gone, too busy for a single visit. I just nodded, pretending their indifference didn't shatter me. But they're about to learn that even a broken heart can rise again, stronger than ever. Stick with me as I tell my story, and tell me where you are watching from. I want to know how far my voice can reach. Please like and share to help my story reach more people. It's been 2 years since I first heard the word that changed everything. 2 years since my life became a silent, harrowing battle fought entirely within the confines of my own mind and body. 2 years since cancer moved in, uninvited, and decided to make itself at home. But the real enemy wasn't the disease itself, not at first. The real enemy was the creeping, suffocating silence that settled around me, the echoing emptiness where my family should have been. David, my only son, Jessica, his wife, even my sweet grandson, Leo. They became ghosts, living specters in a life that was supposed to be about support, about love. They acted, quite simply, like I was already dead. I was 62 years old, navigating the sterile, hushed corridors of the oncology wing, a place where hope and despair often shared the same breath. Each chair in the waiting room seemed to amplify my loneliness. Other patients, frail and pale like me, were almost always accompanied. There were young couples holding hands, adult children fussing over their elderly parents, teenagers scrolling on their phones but always with an arm draped protectively around a parent's shoulder. I sat there, a solitary figure amidst a tapestry of human connection, the weight of my aloneness heavier than any impending diagnosis. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting a sickly glow that seemed to mirror the fear blossoming in my chest. My hands trembled as I clutched the referral letter, the words blurring before my eyes. Then came the moment. Dr. Evans, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, delivered the news with a gentle solemnity. "Eleanor, your biopsy results confirm it. It's stage 2 breast cancer." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. My mind went blank for a second. Then a quiet, chilling realization settled over me. I would face this alone. There would be no shared tears, no comforting embrace, no strong hand to hold. This fight, I knew, was mine and mine alone. My first instinct, a reflex born of decades of motherhood, was to call David. He was my son, my flesh and blood. Surely he would want to know. My fingers fumbled with the phone, the numbers blurring, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He answered on the third ring, his voice crisp, slightly impatient. "Mom, is everything all right? I'm in a meeting right now, a really important one. Can this wait?" My throat tightened. "David, no, look, Mom, I really have to go. Just text me. I'll get back to you later, okay?" The line clicked, a harsh, definitive sound, before I could even utter the word cancer. I stared at the dead phone, the heat of unshed tears pricking at my eyes. I wasn't crying because of the diagnosis. The fear of cancer was a cold, clinical dread, something I could rationalize, something I could fight. But the realization that my own son couldn't spare a moment, couldn't even listen, that his work superseded my life-altering news, that was a pain far deeper, a wound that bled silently. It was the pain of utter indifference. The first chemotherapy session was a blur of needles, chemical odors, and a gnawing emptiness. The infusion room was like the waiting room, except now the companions were actively comforting, stroking hair, whispering encouragement, sharing snacks. I watched them, a silent observer, feeling increasingly like an alien in a landscape of human connection. The nausea started subtly, a low hum in my stomach, then intensified, a wave of sickness that left me dizzy and weak. Nurse Thompson, a lovely woman with a warm smile, came over to check my vitals. She paused, her brow furrowing slightly. "Is someone coming to pick you up, honey?" she asked, her voice soft with concern. My pride, a stubborn companion through decades of hardship, flared. I couldn't admit I was entirely alone. "Oh yes," I managed, a weak smile pasted on my face. "My son, he's just running a little late. Traffic, you know." It was a lie, but it felt easier than facing the pity in her eyes. Driving home was an act of sheer will. The world swam around me, the streetlights blurring into halos, the engine humming a monotonous drone that vibrated through my bones. Each turn of the wheel felt monumental, each breath an effort. I was in a chemical haze, battling not just the sickness in my body, but the profound ache in my soul. A few days later, after the worst of the immediate side effects had passed, I tried calling David again. This time, Jessica answered. Her voice was syrupy sweet, a practiced cheerfulness that always set my teeth on edge. Eleanor, what a pleasant surprise. Is everything all right? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Jessica, I have something important to tell you. I've been diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer, and I've just had my first chemotherapy session. The words came out in a rush, a heavy confession. There was a moment of silence on the other end, then a theatrical gasp. Oh my God, Eleanor, that's... Wow, we'll definitely need to process this. I mean, wow. Her tone was a strange mix of shock and performance, as if she were reading lines from a script. It offered no comfort, no genuine empathy. I clutched the phone tighter. I was hoping perhaps you and David and Leo could come visit sometime soon. I'm quite tired, and it would just be nice to see you all. My voice was a desperate plea disguised as a request. Jessica's syrupy tone returned, thicker now, laced with a practiced regret. Oh, Eleanor, you know how incredibly busy David is with his promotion coming up. And Leo's soccer schedule is absolutely insane this season. He's got practice almost every day, then games on the weekends. And then, of course, my mother hasn't been feeling well, so I've been spending a lot of time helping her. On her. She rattled off the excuses like a well-rehearsed mantra. But we'll definitely try to find a window. Soon, absolutely soon. Soon never came. Week after week, I sat through my chemotherapy sessions, my body growing weaker, my spirit growing heavier. And week after week, I watched other families, their faces etched with concern, their hands offering comfort, their voices filled with love. I watched them, and I sat alone. The weeks that followed blurred into a relentless cycle of exhaustion and nausea, each chemotherapy session a fresh assault on my already fragile body. The chemicals coursed through my veins, leaving a metallic taste in my mouth and a bone-deep weariness that no amount of rest could alleviate. Every fiber of my being screamed for reprieve, but the fight was far from over. In the infusion room, I continued my silent observations. A young woman, no older than 30, had her husband by her side every single time, holding her hand, whispering jokes, bringing her favorite snacks. An elderly man received visits from a rotating cast of grandchildren, their youthful energy a beacon of hope in the somber room. I, meanwhile, remained a solitary island, my book an insufficient shield against the stark reality of my isolation. The kindness of Nurse Thompson was a small comfort, but it only underscored the gaping void left by my own family. Then came week 4, a brutal reminder of the battle raging within me. I was in the shower, the warm water cascading over my scalp, when I noticed the first strands. Not just a few, but clumps, dark, wet ribbons tangling in my fingers. I watched in horrified fascination as more and more hair detached itself, swirling down the drain, a symbol of my fading self. Panic, cold and raw, gripped me. This wasn't just physical, it was an erasure of identity. My hands shook as I reached for the phone, the familiar desperation for human connection overriding my earlier disappointment. I had to tell David. He answered, his voice sharp, irritated. Mom, I told you I'm in meetings all morning. I can't talk right now. My hair is falling out, David, I whispered, the words catching in my throat, thick with tears. All of it. I'm scared. It was a plea, a raw confession of fear I hadn't voiced to anyone else. There was a slight pause, then his voice, devoid of warmth, detached, almost clinical. Look, Mom, that's normal with chemo, right? They tell you that it'll grow back. It's just hair. He said it with such finality, as if dismissing a trivial complaint. I closed my eyes, a fresh wave of despair washing over me. Never mind, I mumbled, my voice barely audible. I hung up before he could respond, the click of the receiver echoing the finality of his indifference. There was no point. He couldn't or wouldn't understand. Later that day, I found myself in a small boutique surrounded by rows of synthetic hair. The woman behind the counter, a kind soul with understanding eyes, offered gentle suggestions. But as I tried on wig after wig, staring at my reflection, I saw a stranger. My own face, pale and drawn, was framed by hair that wasn't mine, a stark reminder of what I had lost. I bought one, a soft brown bob, and left feeling more alien than ever. It was a purchase I made alone, a silent acknowledgement that I was navigating this transformation without a single witness or comfort. The silence in my small house became the heaviest burden. No phone calls asking how I felt. No text messages beyond the occasional generic well wishes that felt more obligatory than heartfelt. No visitors, no one to share a meal with, no one to simply sit beside me in quiet companionship. The days stretched into an endless expanse of solitude. Sometimes I found myself talking to the kettle as it boiled, or to the wilting plants on my windowsill just to hear a human voice, even if it was my own. My world had shrunk to the four walls of my home and the sterile confines of the hospital, both devoid of genuine connection. 6 months into the relentless grind of treatments, a profound resignation settled over me. I finally gave up on David and Jessica. They wouldn't come. They wouldn't call. Their lives were too full, too important for a sick, fading mother. The only acknowledgement of my existence during that entire period was a single, generic thinking of you card, arriving weeks after my first chemo session, signed by David and Jessica in perfect, impersonal script. It was tossed into a drawer, a hollow gesture that only cemented their absence. Then, one crisp autumn morning, a thick envelope arrived. The return address bore the name of a law firm in Malibu, California. My heart gave an involuntary lurch. Malibu? I didn't know anyone in Malibu. My hands trembled slightly as I tore it open. The letter began formally, stating its purpose: to inform me of the death of Robert Maxwell, Robert, my brother, my estranged brother, whom I hadn't spoken to in over 20 years, not since a bitter argument about our father's will that had driven a wedge between us too deep to bridge. He had died peacefully, the letter stated, from a sudden heart attack. And then came the part that stole my breath. Robert, it explained, had left his entire estate to me, Eleanor Maxwell. My eyes scanned the details, disbelief warring with a strange, numb shock. A $2 million beach house overlooking the Pacific Ocean in Malibu. A portfolio of investments. A life insurance policy worth a considerable sum. He had no wife, no children, no other living relatives. I was his sole heir. I sat there, the letter rustling in my trembling hands, a painful irony blooming in my chest. My brother, who had spent decades as a ghost in my life, had, in his death, offered me more support, more tangible care than my own son had managed in my entire cancer battle. Robert, the one I had believed had forgotten me, had remembered. David, the one who should have been there, had simply forgotten. 18 long, arduous months later, the doctors gave me the words I had craved: remission. The treatments were complete. The cancer, for now, was gone. I was physically scarred, emotionally battered, and a shadow of my former self, but I was alive. And I had a new beginning. The beach house in Malibu beckoned, a distant beacon of hope. A chance to start over, far from the cold indifference of the family who had all but erased my existence. It was time to leave everything behind and build a new life, a life where I was not invisible. The move to Malibu was a bittersweet pilgrimage. Packing up my old house, the one I had shared with David's father and then lived in alone for 27 years, was an excavation of memories. Each box held echoes of a life I was now leaving behind. Photos of David as a baby, his first drawings, his graduation cap. They all went into a box labeled past. I hadn't heard from him in over 3 months, not since I had vaguely mentioned that I was moving out of state after the remission news. He hadn't asked where. He hadn't cared. The silence was familiar now, a dull ache rather than a sharp pain. But the moment I stepped into Robert's beach house, something shifted within me. The ocean stretched out endlessly from every window, a vast, shimmering canvas of blues and greens. Sunlight streamed into the kitchen, illuminating the sleek countertops and high-end appliances. The bedrooms, unlike the ones in my old house, felt open, airy, without the suffocating echoes of loneliness. This wasn't just a house, it was a sanctuary, a promise of a new beginning. For the first time in years, I felt like I could truly breathe. The weight I had carried, the constant struggle for air against a crushing emotional burden, began to lift. I spent my days exploring the house, walking the beach, and simply existing in the newfound peace. It was a revelation, a quiet rebirth. 6 glorious weeks drifted by, filled with the rhythmic sound of waves and the gentle sea breeze. I had savored every moment of my anonymity, a precious gift after years of feeling both invisible and exposed. I hadn't shared my new address with anyone, least of all David or Jessica. So when the doorbell chimed one Tuesday morning, its unexpected melody sent a jolt through me. My heart gave a small, nervous flutter. Who could it be? I opened the door to find Jessica standing on my porch, bathed in the golden California sunlight. She was perfectly coiffed, dressed in a fashionable summer dress, her makeup impeccable. Her smile was brilliant, a dazzling display of perfectly aligned teeth, but it was a practiced smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. Those eyes, I noticed, were already darting past me, taking in the expanse of the ocean view behind me. "Eleanor!" she exclaimed, her voice a little too loud, a little too effusive. Before I could react, she stepped forward and enveloped me in a surprisingly tight hug. It was the first physical affection I had received from her in years. "Oh my God, you look amazing. I can't believe you didn't tell us about this gorgeous place." She pulled back, her hands still gripping my arms, a performance of genuine delight. My voice was quiet, almost a whisper, as I detached myself from her grasp. "How did you find me, Jessica?" She waved a dismissive hand, her eyes still scanning the panoramic view. "Oh, you know David. He's so good at tracking things down. He's got his ways. Once he heard about his generosity, he knew we just had to come see you. And this place," she gestured around wildly, "it's just incredible. Can I come in? I'm just dying to see what Robert left you." The emphasis on what Robert left you was undeniable, a subtle but distinct shift in her enthusiasm from my well-being to my newfound assets. I stepped aside, a knot forming in my stomach. As she swept past me, I watched her. Her eyes weren't on me, they were on the polished travertine floors, the custom cabinetry in the open-plan kitchen, the tasteful art hanging on the walls. Her gaze lingered on the high ceilings and the expansive glass doors that led to the oceanfront patio. Every expensive detail was cataloged, assessed. "This is incredible," Jessica breathed, her voice filled with genuine awe as she wandered through the living area. "I had no idea Robert was so well off. David always said he was just some eccentric hermit who lived off the grid." A dismissive chuckle followed, revealing her true, long-held perception of my brother. "Would you like some coffee?" I offered, needing a moment, needing to process this sudden, brazen intrusion into my peaceful new life. The visit was too sudden, too convenient, and my instincts screamed caution. "Oh, that would be lovely, Eleanor, thank you," she chirped, settling onto a plush sofa, making herself entirely at home. As I turned toward the kitchen, she launched into a carefully constructed apology, her voice dripping with what she clearly intended to be sincerity. "Eleanor, I owe you such an enormous apology, really, from the bottom of my heart. I know we weren't as present as we should have been during your situation." She paused as if expecting me to chime in, but I remained silent, pouring hot water over the coffee grounds. The aroma filled the kitchen, a welcome distraction. "You know," she continued, her voice softening, "it was just such a crazy time. David's promotion was hanging by a thread, and he was working around the clock. And then Leo started having those dreadful issues at school, you remember? So much to deal with, and my mother, bless her heart, her health problems flared up again, and she really needed me." The familiar litany of excuses, the same ones she'd spun when I was begging for a visit, for a kind word. They sounded even more hollow now, echoing in the vast, luxurious space of Robert's home. I brought her a cup of coffee, then sat opposite her, my gaze steady. "How is Leo?" I asked, cutting through her narrative. "My grandson. The last time I had seen him was 2 years ago, before my diagnosis, before the silence. My heart ached for him, for the lost connection." Jessica took a sip of her coffee, avoiding my eyes. "Oh, Leo's fine, Eleanor, growing so fast, you wouldn't believe it." She paused, then added with a forced casualness, He asks about his grandma Eleanor sometimes. When he's reminded, it was a blatant lie. I knew with an unsettling certainty that Leo wouldn't have been reminded. Not by them. My heart sank a little deeper. The performance, I realized, had only just begun. Jessica, completely oblivious to my silence, continued her elaborate performance. Honestly, Eleanor, not a day went by that we didn't think of you. Our hearts broke for you. But we just felt so helpless. What could we really do? And we didn't want to intrude to add to your stress. We thought giving you space, letting you focus on your healing, was the best thing. Cancer, it's so scary, and we just thought you needed your privacy during such a personal battle. She spoke with a practiced cadence, each word carefully chosen to sound empathetic, yet it rang utterly hollow. She then transitioned seamlessly to Robert. And then, of course, the news about Robert. We were absolutely devastated, truly. I mean, we weren't close, obviously, but family is family, right? And again, we didn't want to intrude on your grieving and healing process. Oh, with his passing and everything. How thoughtful, I murmured, the words laced with a sarcasm I hoped she wouldn't catch. My gaze drifted to her hands, perfectly manicured, soft and unblemished. They were the hands of someone who had never wiped a feverish brow, never comforted a scared, sick person, never truly given care. They were the hands of someone entirely untouched by the harsh realities of my fight. She leaned forward, her smile widening. But we're here now, Eleanor. And we want to make up for lost time. We really do. Her eyes, however, were not on me. They swept across the room again, lingering on a particularly striking piece of abstract art, then on the Italian leather sofa. The lost time she wanted to make up for seemed less about me and more about what the house represented. Then came the subtle shift, the real reason for her visit emerging from the carefully constructed facade. Actually, she began, lowering her voice slightly. David's business partner, Marcus, he's an absolute whiz with finances. He was just wondering about the estate situation, for tax purposes. David mentioned you'd inherited quite a bit, and Marcus is always trying to help family friends with financial planning. Everything's been handled, I stated, my voice neutral, offering no further details. The attorney Robert had hired was far more competent than any whiz David might know. Jessica nodded, undeterred. Of course. But if anything comes up, or if you ever need any advice, David knows some excellent estate attorneys. Or even if you have any property management issues with a place this big, we'd be happy to help. We're just so good at finding people, reliable contractors and such. The generous offer hung in the air, a stark, almost insulting contrast to their complete absence during my illness. Suddenly, they were eager to help manage my newfound wealth after abandoning me during my darkest hours. The audacity was breathtaking. For the next hour, Jessica chattered on, a relentless monologue about her life, Leo's latest achievements, David's soaring career, her social engagements, her mother's perpetually fluctuating health. She skillfully navigated around any mention of the past 2 years, the period of my cancer battle, as if it had simply never happened, or as if I hadn't been an integral part of it. I sat there observing her, a chilling curiosity blooming within me. How could someone be so utterly devoid of self-awareness, so casually cruel in their neglect, yet so polished in their presentation? It was a study in manipulation. Finally, she decided it was time to leave. She rose, smoothed her dress, and then, with another theatrical display, pulled me into a tight hug. It was just so wonderful to see you, Eleanor. We really must do this again soon. How about dinner next weekend? Little Leo would absolutely love to see the beach. He's always talking about the ocean. The lie about Leo was delivered with such conviction, I almost believed it for a fleeting second. I'll think about it, I replied, a non-committal response that felt safe. As she walked towards her car, she turned back, flashing her brilliant, empty smile one last time. I'm just so glad you're doing well, Eleanor. You look healthy and happy. It's truly wonderful. I watched her drive away, the expensive car disappearing down the winding road. The moment she was out of sight, the carefully constructed calm I had maintained began to crack. There was no doubt in my mind. My inheritance had sparked their renewed interest. My health, my well-being, those were mere footnotes. The money was the story. 3 days later, my new neighbor, Helen, a lively woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, cornered me at the mailbox. "Eleanor, I just had to tell you," she began, her voice a low, indignant hiss. "Your daughter-in-law, Jessica, she cornered me here for a good 20 minutes the other day, asking all sorts of questions." My stomach tightened. "What kind of questions, Helen?" Helen crossed her arms, a fierce, protective glint in her eyes. "Oh, everything. About you, about Robert's estate, about... Well, she actually asked if you seemed, and I quote, confused, or what was the word she used? Forgetful, lately. Said it was out of family concern, mind you." Helen scoffed. "Can you believe the nerve? I told her straight up, Eleanor is sharp as a tack. And if you had any real family concern, you should have been here when she was actually sick." That shut her up quickly enough. A cold dread spread through me. Confused? Forgetful? The words echoed in my mind, chilling me to the bone. Suddenly, Jessica's entire performance clicked into place. The feigned concern, the subtle questions about the estate, the manufactured worry about my mental state. It wasn't just about the money, it was about taking it. Jessica wasn't just curious. She was building a case that I was mentally incompetent, a case that would allow them to swoop in and control, perhaps even seize Robert's inheritance. My new life, I realized, was already under attack. The layers of betrayal were peeling back, revealing a darkness far more sinister than mere neglect. If you're finding my story compelling, please consider liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to hear the rest of my journey. Your support means the world to me. Helen's words about Jessica's questions had ignited a cold fire within me, a grim determination to uncover the full extent of their deceit. I needed answers, concrete proof of their malice. The next day I drove back to my old neighborhood, the familiar streets now feeling like a foreign country, tainted by the memories of my abandonment. My first stop was Maria Henderson, my former next-door neighbor, a woman with whom I had shared coffee and confidences for decades. Maria welcomed me with a hug, her concern evident. As we sat in her sun-drenched kitchen, I gently steered the conversation toward Jessica. Maria's face clouded instantly. "Oh, Eleanor," she began, her voice low with indignation. "Your daughter-in-law, she came by several times while you were getting treatment. Said she was worried that the cancer was affecting your memory. It was just so strange." My stomach clenched. "What exactly did she ask, Maria?" "Well," Maria frowned, recalling, "she kept asking if I noticed you acting confused or paranoid, or if you were still capable of living alone safely. It was very pointed, Eleanor. She made it sound like she was building a case." Maria then leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "She even said that the family was considering intervention, maybe finding you a nice assisted living place." My blood ran cold. Assisted living? While I was fighting for my life, they were planning to institutionalize me. The sheer audacity, the callousness of it, took my breath away. "Did you tell her anything, Maria?" Maria shook her head emphatically. "Absolutely not, Eleanor. I told her you were strong and your mind was buoy sharp. You were going through a terrible time, but you were never confused. That woman has some nerve." Her fierce loyalty brought a lump to my throat, a stark contrast to the betrayal I was uncovering. Next, I visited Tom, the manager of the local grocery store where I had shopped for 20 years. He was a kind, observant man who knew everyone in the neighborhood. His reaction to my inquiry about Jessica was similar to Maria's. "Yeah, your daughter-in-law came in a few times, Eleanor," he confirmed, leaning against the counter, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Asked if you seemed... Well, she used the term mental health, said she was just checking in. Very concerned." "What did you tell her?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Tom chuckled, a dry, knowing sound. "I told her you seemed perfectly normal to me, always knew exactly what you wanted. Never forgot your reusable bags." She seemed disappointed by that answer. The image of Jessica's disappointed face, caught in the act of fishing for damaging information, solidified the chilling picture forming in my mind. My next call was to Nurse Emily at my oncologist's office. After explaining my situation and my need to understand, Nurse Emily was hesitant, but eventually confirmed. Yes, Ms. Maxwell, your daughter-in-law, Jessica, did call on several occasions. She expressed very specific concerns about potential memory issues or confusion you might be experiencing due to your treatment. And what did you tell her? I assured her, Ms. Maxwell, that you had shown no signs of cognitive impairment whatsoever. Your records indicated you were always lucid, fully aware, and capable of making your own decisions. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with a sickening finality. It wasn't just neglect. It was a calculated, systematic campaign to undermine my credibility and mental capacity. They hadn't just abandoned me. They had actively tried to declare me incompetent, to have me institutionalized, likely to gain control over my assets even before Robert's inheritance came into play. The cruelty was staggering. Back at the beach house, a chill settled over me despite the warm California sun. I began to go through the last few boxes from my old house, the ones I hadn't unpacked yet. Buried beneath old tax returns and faded photographs, I found it. A document, a photocopy, folded neatly. As I unfolded it, my hands trembling, the words leaped out at me. Petition for Guardianship. The names listed sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. David Smith versus Eleanor Smith. It was dated 8 months into my cancer treatment at the very height of my vulnerability. The petition claimed diminished mental capacity and an inability to manage my own affairs. Attached were Jessica's sworn statements, a horrifying litany of lies detailing my supposed confusion, paranoia, and inability to live independently. She had painted a picture of a frail, addled old woman, utterly dependent and incapable. And then a small handwritten note from a lawyer, scrawled in the margin, insufficient evidence of incapacity, need medical documentation or witness statements. They had tried. They had truly tried to take everything from me, even my freedom, while I was battling for my life. They had failed, but not for lack of trying. The discovery was like a punch to the gut, stealing what little breath I had left. The phone rang, its sudden jolt making me jump. I glanced at the caller ID, David. I took a deep, steadying breath, schooling my features, my voice, fury churned within me, but I forced it down, replaced it with a calm, measured tone. Mom, David's voice, as always, held that practiced, distant cheerfulness. Jessica said she had a lovely visit with you the other day. She's so excited that you're doing well. Yes, I replied, each word carefully placed. It was quite enlightening. He seemed to miss the subtle barb. That's wonderful to hear. Listen, we were thinking, now that you're all settled, maybe we could all come over for dinner next weekend. You know, the whole family. Leo would absolutely love to see the beach. My heart ached at the mention of Leo, a pawn in their cruel game. Perhaps, I said, buying myself time. Great. Jessica mentioned that you seem to be settling in really well. It's such a relief to know you're happy and stable. Stable, I echoed, my voice unwavering despite the inferno raging beneath my calm exterior. I'm very stable indeed, and I would show them just how stable I was. Saturday arrived, a day that felt less like a family reunion and more like a carefully orchestrated play. I was ready. My lawyer, Sarah Jenkins, a sharp, empathetic woman, had been fully briefed on David and Jessica's past attempts to declare me incompetent. More importantly, Robert's estate attorney, Sandra Walsh, had been exceptionally helpful. When I told her about Jessica's probing questions and the guardianship petition, Sandra had revealed something that sent a shiver down my spine, a testament to Robert's quiet wisdom and foresight. Eleanor, she had said, her voice grave, Robert included very specific, detailed instructions in his will about what should happen if anyone contested your inheritance or, more importantly, questioned your mental capacity. He anticipated this, it seems. Robert, even in death, was looking out for me. The doorbell chimed precisely at the appointed time. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and opened the door. There they were. David, looking noticeably uncomfortable, his shoulders hunched. Jessica, poised and impeccably dressed, her smile wide and artificial. And Leo, now 9 years old, his eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and unfamiliarity. He had grown so much, taller and leaner, a shy innocence still clinging to him. My heart ached for the years of lost connection. "Eleanor!" Jessica exclaimed, her voice bright, forcing a hug on me again. David offered a strange smile and a quick nod. "Grandma Eleanor," Jessica prompted Leo, giving him a gentle nudge. "Say hello to Grandma Eleanor." Leo's eyes met mine, a flicker of uncertainty in their depths. He didn't recognize me. Not truly. "Hi," he mumbled, his voice soft. I crouched down, trying to meet his gaze without overwhelming him. "Hello, sweetheart. You've gotten so tall," I said, my voice softer than I intended. The distance between us was a chasm created by his parents' choices. As they stepped inside, David's eyes immediately swept across the grand living room, the panoramic ocean view, the elegant furnishings. His discomfort seemed to deepen, replaced by a stunned awe. "Mom, this place is incredible," and he breathed, a hint of envy in his voice. "I had no idea Uncle Robert lived so well." "He was very successful," I replied simply, my gaze steady. I led them to the dining area, where I had set a casual lunch. Leo immediately gravitated to the sliding glass doors, his face pressed against the glass, mesmerized by the crashing waves and the endless expanse of the Pacific. During lunch, Leo remained captivated by the ocean, occasionally pointing out a distant sailboat or a passing pelican. Jessica, meanwhile, wasted no time. Her fork paused midair as she turned to me, her smile still firmly in place. "Eleanor, you've done such beautiful things with this place. It's truly a dream. But tell me, have you thought about what you'll do with all this space? I mean, it seems like a lot for one person to manage. It's so big." The thinly veiled suggestion of my inability to cope was unmistakable. "I'm managing just fine, Jessica," I said, my voice calm as I offered David a glass of homemade lemonade. "Actually, I've been thinking about doing some entertaining. It's been so long since I've had family gatherings." The word family hung in the air, weighted with unspoken history. David shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "That's great, Mom," he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. "You deserve to enjoy yourself after everything." "Yes," I agreed, a subtle emphasis on everything. My mind flashed back to the solitary chemotherapy sessions, the nights spent alone battling pain and fear, the silence that had been their answer to my desperate calls. After everything, I've gained a new perspective on a lot of things. Jessica, ever the conversational magician, smoothly redirected. She launched into a detailed account of their recent extravagant vacation to Hawaii, followed by a glowing summary of Leo's latest achievements in school and soccer. David, on the other hand, began to complain, his voice tinged with self-pity. "Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in obligations, Mom. Work is just relentless, and everyone needs something from me all the time. It's exhausting." I listened, a cold, hard knot forming in my stomach. Everyone needs something from him? I thought of my own desperate needs during treatment, the simple plea for a visit, a phone call, a sign that I wasn't utterly alone. His complaints felt like an open wound, a fresh insult. "That must be difficult," I said, my tone mild, almost detached. David nodded, seemingly satisfied with my bland sympathy. "Exactly. That's why it's so nice to see you settled and comfortable here. One less thing to worry about, you know." He took a long sip of his lemonade, oblivious, or perhaps willfully ignorant, of the profound irony in his words. One less thing to worry about. For him, perhaps. But for me, it was a constant, aching reminder of the worries he had so readily dismissed. The meal continued, a delicate dance of pleasantries and unspoken resentments, a prelude to the revelations I knew were coming. After a tense, superficial lunch, I offered them a tour of the house. Leo, ever the innocent, brightened considerably when we reached the game room, his eyes lighting up at the sight of a vintage pinball machine and a foosball table. He was even more thrilled by the private path leading directly to the beach. For a few precious minutes, the dark cloud of their presence seemed to lift, replaced by the joyful sounds of a child discovering new wonders. We eventually made our way to the spacious oceanfront deck, the sound of the waves providing a dramatic backdrop. The air was salty and cool, but a different kind of chill settled over me as Jessica resumed her line of attack, her voice honeyed with feigned concern. Eleanor, this is such a wonderful setup, truly, but I can't help worrying about you being here all alone in such a big place. You know, at our age, we all need to start thinking about these things more seriously, about our future, our care. David, seizing the opportunity, chimed in, his voice attempting a serious paternal tone. Mom, we've actually been talking about this, about your future care needs and planning ahead. It's just prudent. What kind of decisions are you referring to? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. I looked from David to Jessica, their expressions a carefully crafted mask of solicitousness. David cleared his throat. Well, you know, estate planning and what level of care you might need down the road. It's important to have everything in order. I'm in perfect health, I stated, my eyes fixed on them. The words were a challenge, an undeniable truth. Jessica quickly agreed, almost too quickly. Oh, absolutely, Eleanor, you look absolutely radiant. But you know these cognitive issues from chemotherapy can sometimes pop up later. And there's an increased risk of other health problems, post-treatment, you know. Her smile was sickly sweet, a thin veneer over her predatory intent. That's very thoughtful of you both, I said, letting the words hang in the air, each one dripping with understated venom, especially considering how attentive you were during my actual treatment. David's face flushed a deep crimson. Jessica's practiced smile flickered, a momentary crack in her facade. Mom, we've talked about this, David stammered, his voice losing some of its composure. We know we weren't as present as we should have been. We feel terrible about that. Truly. I turned to face them fully, my gaze unwavering, hardening into a resolve that left no room for doubt. You know, I said, my voice low and steady, I found something interesting while I was packing up the old house. Something I thought you might want to see. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and pulled out the folded Guardianship petition. I placed it gently on the patio table between us. The paper, stark white against the dark wood, became the focal point of their horror. Both David and Jessica stared at it, their faces draining of color, their eyes wide with disbelief and dawning fear. Would either of you like to explain this to me? I asked. The silence that followed, stretching out, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the distant crash of waves. Leo, who had been quietly watching us, sensed the sudden, profound tension. He looked up, his young face etched with worry. David stammered, his voice a pathetic croak. Mom, that was just a precaution. Our lawyer suggested we explore all options. You were sick, and we were worried. Worried? I scoffed, a bitter taste in my mouth. This document, David claims I am mentally incompetent. It details alleged cognitive decline that, according to my doctors, my neighbors, and even my grocery store manager, never existed. This was not precaution. This was an attempt to strip me of my autonomy. Jessica, pale and trembling, interjected, Eleanor, you're taking this the wrong way. We were just trying to protect you. We were genuinely concerned. Protect me from what? I challenged, my voice rising slightly, though still controlled. Protect me from making my own decisions? From controlling my own money? I know about your inquiries to Maria, to me, to my oncologist's office. You weren't concerned. You were fishing for evidence to support this charade, David insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. Mom, it wasn't like that. We were worried. We thought, or I cut him off, my gaze piercing. You needed more evidence because you didn't have any actual proof of my incapacity, did you? Because it wasn't real. I leaned forward slightly, my voice dropping to a deadly calm whisper. But you know what I am, David? What I really am. I'm rich. Robert left me over $2 million in assets. That's what changed your minds, wasn't it? The thought of all that money slipping through your greedy fingers. Jessica's voice was a shaky protest. That's not fair, Eleanor. We're here because we love you. I laughed then, a short, sharp sound utterly devoid of humor. Love? You want to know what love looks like, Jessica? Love looks like showing up. Love looks like showing up to chemotherapy appointments, holding a hand, offering a kind word, preparing a meal. Love looks like genuine concern, not thinly veiled attempts to declare your mother incompetent. My eyes locked onto David's, who was now openly sweating. Leo, sensing the gravity, had started to cry silently, his small frame trembling. "Love," I continued, my voice unwavering, even with my grandson's frightened gaze on me, "does not look like planning to have your mother declared incompetent so you can control her money." "We never filed it," David cried, his voice bordering on a sob. "We changed our minds." "You changed your minds," I retorted, picking up the petition, the paper feeling heavy in my hand, "because your lawyer told you that you didn't have a case. But you kept the paperwork, didn't you, just in case?" I tapped the document meaningfully. "You should also know that Robert, being a very wise man, included explicit instructions in his will to protect my inheritance. Any attempt to interfere with it, or with my ability to manage it, will have severe consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible. I smiled then, a genuine, chilling smile that reached my eyes. "The kind that would make your current financial problems look like a minor inconvenience." The silence that followed my pronouncement was deafening, broken only by the mournful cry of a distant gull. David and Jessica stared at me, their faces pale with shock and indignation. Leo, sensing the escalating tension, had started to cry, a soft, heartbreaking whimper. Jessica, her composure shattered, snatched his hand and practically dragged him towards their car without another word. David, after a final, desperate, pleading look that I met with an unwavering gaze, followed them. As their car sped away, leaving only the scent of exhaust fumes in its wake, I felt a strange surge of power, cold and precise, flow through me. The reckoning had begun. That evening the phone rang. It was David, his voice tight with panic. "Mom, we need to talk. We need to explain. Can we come back tomorrow?" My resolve was ironclad. "I think we said everything that needed to be said today, David." "No, Mom, you don't understand," he insisted, a hint of desperation in his tone. "It's a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I scoffed softly. "You and Jessica spent 2 years planning to steal my independence and my dignity while I fought cancer alone. You tried to have me declared mentally incompetent. How is that a misunderstanding?" "It wasn't stealing," he insisted, his voice rising. "We were trying to help, to protect you." "Protect me?" I challenged, recounting his wife's lies to Maria, to Tom, to Nurse Emily, the vile claims in the Guardianship petition. "You call those lies in that document helping?" He had no answer. An hour later, Jessica called. Her mask was completely gone, replaced by raw desperation and a sharp, brittle anger. "Eleanor, you can't seriously be considering cutting us off over some old paperwork that was never even used, can you? We're family." "Family?" I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Is that what you call it? Family who plots against the sick and vulnerable?" She tried a different tactic, her voice shifting to a manipulative whine. "Think of little Leo, Eleanor. He adores you. You wouldn't really punish an innocent child for his parents' errors in judgment, would you?" "Jessica," I countered, my voice steady, "in the 2 years I was sick, fighting for my life, how many times did you bring little Leo to see me?" "0, not once. You claimed he was too busy with soccer, but when I asked you about his games earlier, you didn't even know his schedule. Your hypocrisy is astounding." There was a stunned silence. Then, her voice shaking with rage, she asked, "What do you want from us, Eleanor?" "I want you to leave me alone," I stated, simply and clearly. "We can't do that," she shrieked. "You're family, whether you like it or not." "No," I said quietly, the word heavy with finality. "Family shows up when you need them. Family doesn't plot against you when you're vulnerable. You are not my family." I hung up, my hand trembling slightly, but my resolve firm. At 11 p.m., David called again, his voice sounding rehearsed, clearly coached by Jessica. "Mom, we're coming down tomorrow. We need to settle this face to face." "No," I replied without hesitation. "You're not welcome here anymore." "You can't just cut off your family," he pleaded. "Watch me," I said and ended the call. The next afternoon, just as I had anticipated, David and Jessica arrived. Leo was notably absent. They pounded on my front door, their angry shouts echoing through the quiet neighborhood. I sat in my living room, calmly reading a book. the rhythmic sound of the waves a soothing balm to my soul. I ignored them, every forceful knock, every enraged scream. "This isn't over, Eleanor," Jessica shrieked, her voice hoarse with fury. "We won't let you destroy this family." I reached for my phone and called Sarah Jenkins, my lawyer. She listened calmly, then recommended a restraining order, the installation of security cameras, and an immediate update to my will. "It's time to protect yourself, Eleanor," she advised. In the days that followed, through a trusted friend who still lived in my old neighborhood, I learned more about Leo's home life. Jessica's helicopter parenting had reached suffocating levels. David was perpetually absent, and poor Leo was reportedly developing anxiety. My heart ached for my grandson, caught in the crossfire of his parents' greed. The restraining order was served a few days later. The process server reported that Jessica had thrown the papers on the ground, screaming that I was a vindictive old woman and evil. I braced myself for the inevitable escalation. It came that very evening. I was startled by a sickening crash. A large rock had shattered one of my deck windows, glass scattering across the floor. This was the breaking point. I called 911 immediately. Within minutes, police cars converged on my quiet street. As I explained the situation, showing them the restraining verdict, Jessica appeared, her face contorted with fury, screaming at the officers. She was promptly arrested for breaking and entering, violating a restraining order, and destruction of property. David arrived shortly after, arguing frantically with the officers, trying to explain away Jessica's actions. The lead officer, a kind-faced woman, turned to me. "Your security footage will be invaluable, ma'am." Watching them, I felt a profound sadness for the family I had thought I had, for the life I had hoped to share with my son and his family. The dream was shattered beyond repair. Later that night, David called, his voice broken, pleading, "Mom, please, you have to drop the charges. It's a felony. Jessica will go to jail. Please, Mom, don't do this." "David," I said, my voice weary but firm, "you had 2 years. 2 years while I was fighting cancer alone to show me that family mattered to you. 2 years to be there. You chose not to." "What can we do?" he sobbed. "How can we fix this?" "Some things can't be fixed, David," I replied, looking out at the endless, comforting expanse of the Pacific Ocean. "Some betrayals are too deep, some wounds too profound. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." I hung up the phone, the setting sun painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple. A profound sense of peace settled over me, replacing the turmoil. I was free. 6 months after Jessica's arrest, the rhythm of my new life had settled into a soothing, consistent beat. I sat on my deck, the morning sun warming my face, a gentle breeze rustling through my still short but steadily regrowing hair. The ocean stretched out before me, an endless expanse of calm. Suddenly, Helen appeared at the edge of the deck, her smile warm. In her hand, she held a small, beautifully wrapped package. "Happy birthday, Eleanor," she announced, her voice cheerful. 63 looks good on you." I stared at her, genuinely surprised. "My birthday?" I murmured, a faint blush rising on my cheeks. I completely forgot. The past 2 years had been so consuming, so focused on survival, that personal milestones had faded into insignificance. Helen's smile softened. "Well, I didn't. You were the first person I thought of." She handed me the gift, a delicate, hand-painted ceramic bird. It was utterly charming, a small token of genuine affection. I was deeply touched. "You know," Helen continued, settling into a deck chair, "it's funny how life works. I've only known you for a few months, but I feel like I know you better than some people know their own families. You're always so kind, always checking in on Mrs. Lee, bringing fresh cookies to the Millers. You've made this little community a better place." Her words were a balm to my soul, an ironic contrast to the familial abandonment I had endured. In a matter of months, I had found a deeper, truer connection with a new neighbor than I had with my own son in decades. Helen's expression turned a little more serious. "How are things with David and Jessica? Any news?" I sighed, looking out at the ocean. "The restraining order is still active, and Jessica's court case is ongoing. It's a long process." I admitted with a surprising honesty, "I miss who I thought they were, Helen. the idea of my son and his wife. But I don't miss being treated like an obligation or a burden. A few weeks later, a lingering sense of unresolved sadness prompted me to drive back to my old neighborhood, a pilgrimage to the ghosts of my past. As I rounded the familiar corner, my old house came into view. It was abandoned, a stark for sale sign planted in the overgrown lawn, windows boarded up, a shell of its former self. A tremor went through me. Maria Henderson, my ever-vigilant neighbor, met me at the curb, her face grim. "Eleanor," she began, her voice filled with a mix of pity and confirmation. "I heard what happened. I'm so sorry." She then recounted the rapid unraveling of David and Jessica's lives. Their house had gone into foreclosure, a consequence of David's escalating debt and the financial strain from Jessica's legal troubles. David had lost his job due to the negative publicity surrounding Jessica's arrest and the subsequent legal proceedings. They had separated 2 months ago, a messy, bitter split. Jessica had moved back in with her mother in Arizona, while David had Leo on weekends, navigating a contentious divorce and a custody battle. Their greed, I realized, had destroyed everything. A complex mix of vindication and weariness washed over me. They had reaped what they sowed, but the collateral damage was Leo, the only truly innocent victim in this entire tragic saga. My heart ached for him. Back at the beach house, I found myself leafing through old photo albums, images of a seemingly happy family smiling back at me. But now, with the clarity of hindsight, I could see subtle signs of distance, or smiles, and averted gazes that I had once dismissed as trivial. The truth had been there all along, hiding in plain sight. The ringing of my phone startled me. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A small, familiar voice whispered, "Grandma Eleanor, how did you get this number?" It was Leo. My heart constricted. "Leo, oh, sweetheart, I got it from a friend. Are you all right?" His voice was barely audible. "Dad says you're trying to punish us. Mom says you never really loved us anyway." The weight of their manipulations, even on their child, was crushing. "Leo," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "I love you very much. I always have, and I always will." I explained as simply as I could about adult choices and consequences, about doing what was right, even when it was hard. "Will it ever get better?" he asked, his voice filled with a child's hope and despair. "I don't know, sweetheart," I replied, a tear tracing a path down my cheek. "I hope so." Then his small voice, infused with an unexpected strength, said, "I miss you, Grandma Eleanor. I miss seeing your house and playing in your yard." My own tears flowed freely then, a silent torrent of grief for the broken connection, for the love that had been tainted by greed. "I don't believe what Mom said," he added, his voice firm. "I know you love me." And then the line went dead. I clutched the phone to my chest, weeping openly, a release of all the pain and longing I had suppressed for so long. A year passed. My life blossomed in the rich soil of self-discovery and chosen connections. I found a peaceful routine, tending to my flourishing garden, devouring books by the ocean, taking long walks on the beach with Helen and her golden retriever buddy. I joined a book club, took pottery classes, and volunteered at a local animal shelter. David had taken a step down to a job in Oregon, a stark contrast to his once ambitious career. Jessica and Leo remained in Arizona, entangled in an increasingly bitter custody battle. Their greed, I reflected, had indeed destroyed everything, leaving a trail of broken lives and shattered dreams. On the second anniversary of my cancer diagnosis, a day that once filled me with dread, I made a substantial donation of $50,000 to a children's hospital, specifically for a support program for young patients who, like me, face their battles without family present. "I spent 2 years fighting cancer alone," I told the hospital director, my voice strong and clear. "No one, especially a child, should have to do that." I felt a profound sense of completeness, a deep peace I had never known. I had learned to love myself enough to walk away from toxic people, to protect my peace, and to cultivate a life filled with genuine warmth and connection. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the Pacific in hues of fiery orange and soft lavender, my phone buzzed. It was Helen. "Wine and cheese on the deck with the Millers. We're starting in fire." I smiled, a real, unburdened smile. I'll bring dessert, I texted back. This was my family now, I realized, looking out at the vast, forgiving ocean. The one I'd chosen. The price of absence, I finally understood, is ultimately paid by those who choose not to be present. They lost me, but in doing so, I gained myself.